And on Q2, worries on the roadways. Ice and snow creating treacherous conditions for drivers, leading to crashes and closures. Plus, dangers behind the drugs.
Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people.
With President Trump threatening tariffs on Canada, we look at the reality of the situation in Montana and how major of an issue it may be, and changing with the times.
My hope is that over the next couple of years, we can keep integrating some new and some more modern methods.
A school newspaper at Senior giving students a taste of journalism. The MTN 430 News starts right now. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. I'm Russ Riesinger. The winter freeze is definitely upon us as temperatures hover right around zero. The frigid cold continuing to spell some trouble on Montana roadways today. While much of the active snow has moved out, the interstate remains very slick, causing troubles for drivers. Take a look at this map here. As of this afternoon, nearly every single major highway in the entire state listed as having snow and ice. Those conditions leading to another semi-accident near Columbus this morning. Well, Eddie's Corner had to be shut down to Harleton because of a crash in that area. Well, the good news is that residential plow crews are making progress across Billings. City crews were able to get to almost every school last night, while the residential team is just finishing up Zone 2 between Broadwater and Pauley. They're moving to Zone 3 tonight, which covers most of the west end before going to Area 4 on the south side. Well, unfortunately, those commutes could remain a little dicey over the next couple of days. With a first look at the weather on this Tuesday, here's meteorologist Jason Stiff. Jason?
Well, lots of plowing of our streets and roads around the area, but the snow itself not disappearing anytime soon because it's still a very cold day. Now, all the snow that we had Sunday and Monday, that was pushed further to the north and west for much of the day today. So a drier day. However, it was not a warmer day. I'm tracking some other changes too. As you can see, we'll have another cold night tonight. More snow returning on Wednesday, but it's going to be light and more chances for cold and snow in the entire future. I'll give you a forecast coming up.
One man is behind bars after a weapons complaint turned into a nearly 4-hour standoff in Billings. At around 4 this morning, Billings police officers responded to a report of gunshots in the 400 block of Jerry Lane. When arriving on scene, officers heard the gunshots as well and discovered they were coming from a camper. The SWAT team, negotiators, and Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office then converged on the scene after it was determined that one man was inside that residence firing multiple rounds outside. Negotiations with the suspect, 53-year-old William Van Meter, continued for several hours until he came outside and followed commands around 7:30 this morning. Van Meter, who was evaluated for injuries and mental health concerns, has been charged with criminal endangerment and assault on a peace officer. No one was injured during the incident. President Donald Trump is moving forward with tariffs on China, while proposed tariffs on Mexico and Canada are now on hold as negotiations over border security continue. The president says tariffs are needed to stop the flow of drugs into the U.S. Tonight, MTN's Heaven Van looks into claims that drugs are flowing from Canada into the U.S. and how big of an issue it truly is.
On February 1st, President Donald Trump imposed taxes on Mexico, China, and Canada. In a memo by the White House, they say that the tariffs are meant to address the extraordinary threat posed by illegal immigrants and drugs, including deadly fentanyl.
Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
The tariffs on Canada include a 10% tariff on energy and a 25% tariff on all other imported goods. The White House says there is also a growing presence of Mexican cartels operating fentanyl and nitazene synthesis labs in Canada. They say a recent study recognized Canada's heightened domestic production of fentanyl and its growing footprint with an international narcotics distribution. The Canadian Prime Minister disagrees.
Less than 1% of fentanyl, less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States come from Canada. But hearing concerns from both Canadians and Americans, including the American president himself, we're taking action.
Since Montana shares a border with Canada, I decided to check in with the Missouri River Drug Task Force to ask what they've seen of drug trafficking from the north.
For the Missouri River Drug Task Force, we're not seeing a ton from Canada, not in the last little while anyway. That said, we of course don't border Canada within our jurisdiction here.
Nate Kammerman, captain of the task force, says they're continuing to see more drug activity from the southern border, coming to Montana through an East Coast or Las Vegas route.
Fentanyl, as everyone's aware, has been a growing issue. Methamphetamine still remains very prominent in our jurisdiction, and we've seen a pretty good uptick in cocaine in the last little while.
The impact of tariffs on our northern neighbor are yet to be seen, but Captain Kammerman wants our community to know.
There's been a uptick in overdoses with fentanyl again. We're beginning to see more and more powdered fentanyl around. It's dangerous. We do what we can to try to prevent that.
In Bozeman, this is Heaven Van with MTN News.
Well, President Trump is meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the ceasefire with Hamas. Israelis are desperate to get more hostages released, many of them crediting Trump for making the deal possible. Palestinians are also rejoicing over the agreement, but expressing concern about what happens next. Erica Brown reports from the White House.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived for talks at the White House, the first foreign leader visit of President Trump's second term.
Everybody's demanding one thing, very simple, peace. And he wants peace also.
Hamas says negotiations are underway for the second phase of the ceasefire deal, but Trump has previously warned there is no guarantee it will hold. In Israel, family members of hostages still held in Gaza pleaded for their loved ones' return.
We need the United States, we need President Trump and his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to help us seal the second and the third part of the deal.
Trump signed 2 more executive orders today, withdrawing the U.S. from the UN Human Rights Council and cutting funding for a Palestinian relief agency.
A lot of these conflicts that we're working on should be settled, or at least we should have some help in settling them. We never seem to get help. That should be the primary purpose of the UN, the United Nations.
Many refugees say they'll be watching what comes out of today's White House meeting. This man said Netanyahu's visit to Trump is anticipated to reflect his future plans to forcibly displace the Palestinian people and redraw the Middle East. I sincerely hope this plan does not succeed.
The Gaza thing has not worked. It's never worked.
Trump has repeatedly touted a plan to clean out Gaza, suggesting Palestinians be relocated to Egypt or Jordan.
I don't know how they could want to stay. It's a demolition site.
Steve Witkoff, the president's special envoy to the Middle East, says it could take up to 15 years to rebuild the destroyed area of Gaza. Erica Brown, CBS News, the White House.
Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks says hunters submitted the most samples ever for chronic wasting disease testing during the 2024-25 hunting season. In all, hunters submitted more than 9,000 samples, nearly all of them coming from priority sampling areas. 335 samples came back positive, including 202 white-tailed deer, 127 mule deer, and 6 elk. Chronic wasting disease is an always fatal, contagious neurological disease that affects members of the deer family. It's not known to sicken people, but the Centers for Disease Control recommends against eating meat from an animal known to have CWD. It is National News Literacy Week. All week, our parent company, EW Scripps, is partnering with the News Literacy Project to help teach the public how to separate fact from fiction and stay better informed. And that's what has gone on at Billings Senior High School for years through the Bronx Express, a school newspaper that gives students a chance to test their hands at journalism. As our Charlie Kleps reports, after nearly a decade in charge, their teacher made some changes this year to keep up with the times.
If you're going to notice, this camera has just an automatic video setting.
It's not your typical high school class.
And so he's a little bit far away. It's because I've got a 40mm.
But rather than learning about math or science, like most students in these halls, this elective with senior high English teacher Adam Rustad gives students their opportunity to learn about the ins and outs of journalism instead.
Telling stories in a community is really powerful.
That's been the motivation behind the class, which features some students writing for the school paper, the Bronx Express, and others focused on the yearbook.
This is us who is recording the history of senior high this year, so we kind of have an important role.
And whether it's adding to the school's history or highlighting a big event coming up, there's no question the students are bought in.
Although we're just a class and there's not a lot of us in there, we really impact our entire community.
Journalism, I think, is very valuable. A lot of people rely on it to get solid, truthful information.
And while the class is a nice switch up from the students' usual curriculum, Rustad says his main goal is to teach students how to be ethical reporters.
We could report on anything, right? We have some great freedom of speech protections, but there's also kind of a high standard of if we're going to produce good quality news, here's what we have to go through.
And in an effort to maintain high quality, after 9 years in charge, Rustad made some changes this year, getting a new degree that allows him to teach the class on different media platforms.
We can do podcasts, and we can make newscasts, and we can, do more digital magazine layout, stuff like that.
All in an effort to modernize his class along with the changing times.
I think it's nice to have a role model, someone who's really good at what they're doing and constantly changing and improving as a teacher and a person.
Changes students have welcomed wholeheartedly, as the goal remains the same regardless of the medium.
Bringing that sense of community exploration and communication is super important.
And I think that publishing a newspaper like this, it just really helps facilitate a good environment.
In Billings, Charlie Kleps, MTN News.
The Montana Office of Consumer Protection announced that in 2024 it saved Montanans from losing $1 million from business and scam complaints. Of that $1 million, OCP prevented the loss of $314,000 to scammers and recovered $687,000 from consumers who filed complaints against businesses. Additionally, Montanans themselves were able to prevent the loss of some $4 million by recognizing potential scammers. The office says there are ways to keep everyone safe, including never giving out personal information online or over the phone, and never using wire transfers or gift cards to give money to someone you don't know.
Tactics tend to be high pressure, fear-mongering and intimidating toward individuals. In those circumstances, if you can hang up immediately. Call us, and we'd be happy to send out a representative or touch base with you in a way that would kind of calm the situation down. We understand that it can be very scary.
In the past year, the office fielded 900 scam complaints and more than 1,000 complaints about businesses. Montanans can report any phone, email, or mail scams to the Montana Department of Justice's Office of Consumer Protection.